Good morning. My name is Jenica Webster. I'm an associate professor here in the Department of Management, and I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I think we're in for quite an event. So many of you probably know that Marquette University has a strong tradition and commitment to the advancement of women, a tradition dating back to over a century ago, when in 1909, Marquette became the very first Jesuit university to admit women as students. Since those early days, more than 100 years ago, our women alumna have gone on to be leaders in every sector of society, including business, the arts and sciences, engineering, healthcare, law, just to name a few. That commitment to educating women who will go out into the world and to be the difference continues today. Today, Marquette enrolls more women students than men. Today, our College of Engineering boasts the largest class of women studying to be engineers in our history. Today, we're set to launch the Institute for Women's Leadership, whose mission it is to advance women's leadership locally and globally through pioneering research, innovative programming, and collaborative engagement. As a co-director of the Institute, I'm excited to be able to invite you to join me in celebrating its launch at a reception on October 3rd. If any of you are interested in attending or learning more about the Institute, please see Sasha Parsons. She has a table out in the lobby. But today we are here to join together for the Women Business Leader Speaker Series. So after breakfast and some opening remarks, we'll have the keynote address by Becky Frankiewicz, the president of ManpowerGroup of North America. Following Becky's presentation, Olivia Vandenheuvel, the president of the Women in Business Student Organization, will join her on stage where Olivia will have some questions for Becky. And then we'll also have the opportunity to take some of your questions. So of course, none of this is possible without the help and support of our Marquette community. Let me recognize and give special thanks to the family of June and Herman Loebl, whose generous donation will help establish an endowment for the advancement of women in the College of Business. We also thank ManpowerGroup for sponsoring the event today. It's through this type of support that Marquette University is able to continue to prepare women in our community to be the difference. So with that said, let me invite to the stage Father Ron Biganowski to offer our invocation this morning.
This Women's Business Leadership Series meets to recognize that tomorrow's talent is here today. Given that Manpower seeks to lead in creation and delivery of innovative workforce solutions, such vision looks directly at the present moment in light of the horizon of tomorrow, of tomorrow's talent that's here today. Drawing attention to such a temporal sequence, I'm from the English department, T.S. Eliot proposes, time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. An even broader focus comes in Psalm 90 when the psalmist prays, "Teach us to number our days, so that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Finally, calling to mind a fundamental principle of Ignatius Loyola, namely that all things in this world are gifts of God, we come to recognize the ways we're inspired to imagine a better world, to recognize the rhythm of life, wisdom, and grace with which we are blessed, to recognize that all God's gifts echo through our lives. And so, let us bow our heads and pray. Good and loving God, we see your graciousness in our families, our friends, our richly blessed land, in our Marquette community. We thank you for the lasting care you show us. Grace us with the hope of your Son. Stir our hearts with your Spirit. Dedicate our gratitude to the work of your kingdom. Help us extend your peace and justice to the whole world. Finally, Heavenly God, we thank you for the food your bounty gives us. Grant that we may freely give to others what you have so generously given to us, and that we all may share in the banquet of heaven. We ask this through Christ our Lord, and let us all respond by saying, Amen.
I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to reflect on some relevant accomplishments in the College of Business. So, as some of you might know, the U.S. News and World Report 2020 rankings recently came out, and the College of Business is once again ranked among the top 100 business schools. Continuing the tradition of quality and recognizing demand for new skills, we have added new programs in areas such as business and managerial analytics and a master's degree in management. I'd also like to note that the number of women studying in the College of Business has continued to increase over the years and across majors. So this year we welcomed the largest class of women in our elite applied investment management program, and our information systems major continues to outpace national averages for women in technology. Our incoming EMBA class this fall is 62% women, compared to the national average of 35%. We have an extremely active women in business student organization, as well as program-specific opportunities for women students, including women in supply chain and women in finance. And through all of these, we prepare our students to become tomorrow's business leaders for the good of all. And on that note, I'd like to acknowledge our students, faculty, administrators, alumni, friends of the business community joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for all that you do to contribute to the success of the business school. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the 24th president of Marquette University, Dr. Michael Loebl.
Well, thank you, Dr. Webster, and good morning, everyone. I want to welcome all our guests to Marquette University, and I want to give my thanks to the College of Business Administration, the Women in Business Student Organization, and especially the Loebl family for their strong support for our Women's Business Leader Speaker Series. Now, like everyone else, Marquette is living in turbulent times. You know, a few years ago, I started watching a series of videos called Shift Happens and Do You Know? They're great because they're really talking about things that are happening in our country and trends that are seeing, and many of them relate to higher ed. One of my all-time favorite videos talks about the role of education in the future, and it describes how we're preparing students for jobs that don't exist, using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. And the most recent video, and Did You Know, specifically talks about college education, because they say that the amount of new technical information is doubling every 2 years. So that means for students starting a 4-year degree, that half of what they learned in their first year of study will be outdated in their 3rd year of study. So what do we do as a university? Well, I believe a great starting point is listening to people with excellent perspectives on this ever-changing world. People like this morning's featured speaker. And by her own account, in her current role as president of ManpowerGroup of North America, Becky Frankiewicz is working in her 4th career. And I don't think that counts her time as a child growing up on a Texas farm. That's where she learned the value of how to do a little bit of everything in hard work. And you can discover a lot about people by how they describe themselves on their social media accounts. And Becky, by her own self-proclamation, says she's a working mom, a passionate talent developer, a deconstructionist thinker, a marathon runner, and a life squeezer. What a great description, right? Will you please provide a great, warm Marquette welcome for Becky Frankiewicz?
Well, I've never had someone read my description on LinkedIn of myself, so thank you for that. I better update that. My favorite part of that whole description, by the way, the part that I added most recently is life squeezer, because I do believe you got to squeeze everything that you can out of life because we get one shot at this thing. And the other thing I'm very proud of is I am the mother of 3 daughters. And I believe part of my purpose that God's given me in life is to raise strong, independent leadership women. And so I am humbled to be here today amongst all of you. I'm very humbled to have the opportunity to speak around something that I believe will disproportionately and possibly advantage women in the world of work. And so stay tuned for that. So what I thought I would do today is share a bit about what's happening in the workforce around us. So everything the president shared around the change in education is being driven by the change in our economy and the world of work. And so to do so, the first thing I want to do is give a little bit of credential to ManpowerGroup. So one of my favorite questions, and this will surprise you, that I get in media is, what is it like being a woman working for a company called ManpowerGroup? And they're doing it to try to get me. And I say, oh my gosh, I love that question, because let me tell you our history. We were founded post-World War II when women were being displaced from the workforce as men came home from battle. And so we were founded by a gentleman right here in Milwaukee that said, hey, there's a talent pool here that we can leverage for a different purpose. We'll provide women flexibility so they can still be the type of mother or home provider they want to be and provide work. And so just understand, our first employee was a woman. Our second through 50th employee were women, and it was all about believing that women equally could provide manpower to fuel the economy. So if you're ever asked that, now you know the true story. So I'm very proud to have the foresight of women providing the same kind of benefit that men can. So we're a $21 billion company. Our global headquarters are right here, about 5 minutes away. We operate in 80 countries around the world. Fascinating data about ManpowerGroup is that we have almost 30,000 employees, and we operate 5 different businesses. So we have everything from staffing, from Manpower, as you heard me say. Experis does IT, high-tech, cybersecurity. We have a brand called Right Management that does outplacement for people. And then we do quite a bit of corporate consulting and solutions. So we're a big company that most people don't even realize was founded and is still based right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So very proud of the impact that we have. We're proud of our awards too, particularly our newest one, the Women's Choice Award. It's our 2nd year in a row to be recognized by Women's Choice. We've been on World's Most Ethical Companies 10 years, 17 years on Fortune's Most Admired Company list. And so we take our reputation very seriously. Human capital is our asset, and we manage it accordingly. So very excited to have ManpowerGroup right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A little bit about my background. So President Loebl said that I came, it's my fourth or fifth career. I spent my whole life in consumer products. Consumer goods. I worked for PepsiCo for 11 years. I joined ManpowerGroup about 2 years ago. And the only reason I'm standing here today is part of what you're going to see around the workforce trends. I got a call from a recruiter, and so now I actually know, like, we obviously employ a lot of recruiters, so I understand that job better. But I got a call from a recruiter, and the gentleman said, hey, there's this opportunity with ManpowerGroup, and he explained it, and I said, I'm a consumer person. So for all you students in the room, never be narrow about your capability. So I was narrow about my capability in the moment. I'm a consumer person. Thank you so much for thinking of me. No, thank you. I hung up. He calls me back. So, thank the Lord for persistent recruiters. And he said, they know who you are, and that's exactly why they want to talk to you. And he said, our CEO, Jonas Priesing, who actually lives right here in Milwaukee, he said he's seeing talent, consumer behavior, come into talent. And I literally said, no disrespect, my CEO knows this, so if you know him, you can say, yep, she told that story. I said, I don't know that he knows what he's talking about, but that's super interesting. And I stand here today, and you'll see one of the trends I'll share is around seeing the consumerization of talent. In the workforce today, we are living in history. So all of you students that are in school, just know you're witnessing history. We have the longest economic expansion in our country ever. Longest economic expansion in our country ever. We have 107 months of consecutive month-over-month job gains, which is almost 3x now the record. So significant time. So it's no surprise that 48% of employers are telling us they can't find the talent that they need. I was just doing a deep dive around manufacturing. So, manufacturing is an early indicator of recession. In the questions, if you want to ask me about recession, we can talk about that. But what we're finding is it's not the orders, not the demand for manufacturing that's going down. It's the ability to find the talent. And so when you can't fill the jobs, the overall growth rate is depressed. And so it looks like manufacturing is shrinking in demand when truly it's not. So we are living in unprecedented times, and it's underpinned in part by technology. It's also underpinned by the fact that our population growth is at an 80-year low, 80. Our birth rate is at a 32-year low, hit it last March. And so the talent that we have, the workforce that we have, is the workforce that we'll have. There's not a new baby boom coming. And so we have to make sure that our people, our students, our employees have the capability to compete in this changing world of work. So to that end, I'll take you through 7 trends. Now, there's probably 107 trends that I could have covered, but I'll take you through my view on what I think are the most pervasive trends we're seeing today in the world of work. And here are the 7. I'll take you through each. Digitization, this whole piece around learnability. We had a conversation at our table. Mobility, which is one of my favorites. Leading more with your head or with your head and your heart. Employee as consumer, which you can imagine is one of my favorites. Finding a slinky. Some of you probably don't know what that is. That's embarrassing. That's a slinky. So you young people, you can Google it. It's fun. You put it on stairs and it steps down. I didn't think about that until I was in the room and looked around at how young you people are. And then liquid workforce. So I'll cover that one last. So first, digitization. So whether it's the Internet of Things, this idea of cobots. Cobots are actually robots and humans working together, collaborative working, cobots. The cloud. Digitization is changing the way that we work. And increasingly, there's a mini trend coming up, because digitization is not new. We've been seeing that trend for years. But the mini trend is new. And the mini trend is called digital intimacy. And basically what it means is the more technology becomes hyper-connected, we're hyper-connected from technology, we expect more humanity from our technology. Do any of you know what haptic technology is? Haptics. Basically, it gives a feel to technology. So if you've been in a car, driven a car, played any kind of gaming technology recently, in my car, the seat vibrates. And so when you're getting too close to another car, it vibrates. And mine's really crazy because it's the right or the left, and so you have to decide which side of your bottom is vibrating. But that's haptic. And a steering wheel, if you're playing Mario Kart and it tells you, you're turning, that's haptic. So this idea of haptic technology brings feel into technology. And so increasingly, this human desire for physical touch and for feel will be met and solved by invisible tech. So basically giving emotion to technology. And the potential of that is remarkable. So the lady offered this perspective on surgery. Surgery is one. I was at one of the government think tanks in Chicago recently called MXD. They're studying manufacturing 4.0. And I put a VR headset on, which again, not new. I can buy them for my kids for Christmas for $15, $20. But you put this VR headset on, and it's teaching me, with my gloves in my hands, how to fix a jet engine. So it's actually and it moves. So you move your hands and you feel the cylinder move or the knob move that you're touching. So take that a step further. Now through the Internet of Things where everything's connected, I can not just train on the technology, I can actually fix a jet engine remotely because everything is connected. And so haptics will have a significant impact. So in summary, the more technical or digital humans become, the more human we expect our technology to become. And this world will be the world we live in, and honestly gives me hope as we talk about generations and boomers starting to retire. We need to have the capability to learn quickly, to learn on the job, and to be able to work remotely, which I'll talk about. So one of the other things that we are asked, as you can imagine, constantly is, are the robots going to take all our jobs? So first, just let me share that in the 1900s in our country, about 38% of the population was in agriculture, my family being part of that 38%. Today, it's 1.6%. In factories, 25% of the population was in factories at the turn of the century. Today, it's about 9%. I give you those examples to say we've been here before, right? We've absorbed new technology into our workforce. It's created new jobs. And this fourth industrial revolution is no different. So we asked 1,000 companies in America, hey, so not looking at a 10-year horizon, because if you look too far out, you hear things like, we'll all have flying cars, and for those of you who are of age in the room, like the Jetsons, we're going to have the Jetsons. For the rest of you, Google that too. You should keep a list of things you need to go Google, Jetsons being one of them. But we asked 1,000 companies, how is technology going to impact your interest and intention to hire in the next 2 years? So not 10 years, but close horizon. 90% of American companies said they intend to maintain or increase their headcount over the next 2 years. And so then the next logical question is, okay, but what if you're digitizing? What if you're going through this digital revolution? Well, out of the companies in the survey that were furthest along in their digital revolution, they're hiring the most. And so yet again, like agriculture, like factories, we totally anticipate that yes, some jobs will be automated. That's going to happen. Some tasks will be automated, but net new jobs will be created. And to the president's opening, for my 3 daughters, 60% of the jobs that they will face when they graduate don't exist today. 60% of the jobs don't exist today. So between year 1 and year 4, that much change will happen in the world of work. So rest assured, there will be new opportunities, which is going to, again, put pressure on your ability to learn. So this begs the question of what does this mean about leadership? So what is a digital leader? In digital leadership, there's this opportunity to say, okay, what does it mean for the future of leadership? So we did in-depth research, and 80% of leadership will stay exactly the same. Things like drive, endurance, all of that stays the same. 20% will change, and the 20% that changes is really about capturing human potential. So how are you as a leader making sure that you're unleashing potential on your team, making informed risks, or informed decisions around risk? And the reason that's true is with technology, we'll have new decisions to make as leaders. But 80% of leadership will stay exactly the same. Learnability. So I was sharing at the table probably 15 years ago, I first heard this term around agility and ability to learn. And that was 15 years ago, so I was working with Procter or PepsiCo at the time. But now what we found is this ability to learn, relearn, and unlearn, and this continuous cycle is critical. So I shared at the table when I chose to come into this industry, I knew nothing about the world of work. I had never hired a temporary person. I knew nothing about this space. And honestly, as I sat around my table and had our family meeting, I said, I think I'm ready for another vertical learning curve. Like I'm ready to learn from a very, almost a zero foundation again. And that's what will be required as you go forward for all of you to maintain employment will be directly related to your learnability. So in the same survey I told you about, the 2-year view, we asked employers by function, where are we seeing a net increase in jobs and a net decrease in jobs by function? So what we found, no surprise, admin and office, a lot of that is highly repeatable tasks. It will be automated. So we'll see a net decrease there. What's interesting to me, you go across to IT, of course, we all know investments in IT are happening. We'll see a net increase. Manufacturing is fascinating. For the 3rd year in a row, we see the most churn in manufacturing, meaning a net increase, still a net increase, but a lot of jobs and tasks being disrupted. And that's because manufacturing is not, my grandparents' manufacturing. It's not cold, dark, and dirty anymore. It's high tech, automated, led by technology, and highly digital. And so we're seeing new capabilities come into that space. And so what happens, though, if you're sitting in admin and office and you're a net decrease, and remember, we're sitting on a record unemployment in our country, how do I understand if you can move over into manufacturing production? That's the rise of assessment. Data is the new gold, and data on us as individuals and our capabilities to learn, unlearn, and relearn will help us move populations between these. Now, the other thing to note, since we're at a women in business leadership conversation, unfortunately for all of us, the jobs disproportionately impacted by automation are areas where there's overrepresentation of women. So I was very pleased this morning to hear about your women studying in IT, the women coming into your master's program or your graduate school, because we will need to make sure we're upskilling and reskilling our women because we will be disproportionately impacted. Mobility. So this one's really neat because it's about hyperconnectivity. This idea that where your job is located is really about where you are located. So where you are is where you work. And technology is unleashing that for us. So the idea of hyperconnectivity, of FaceTime or Skype, there's a cute new commercial out now where you see the dad with his kids, like putting ice cream on his head and stuff, and he's in a board meeting. Like that is going to be increasingly true. The fastest growing non-wage benefit, so not wages in our country, is remote working. And the reason remote working is the fastest growing is because we are searching for talent. And increasingly, talent is able to call the shots on when, where, and how they'll work, which is, again, consumer behavior. So this concept of mobility, unleashing your ability to work wherever you are, because we're hyper-connected, is crucial. It also is an underpinning of the technology that you all, your phone is a computer. You're holding a computer in your hand. And so your ability to work and contribute wherever you are, whether you're at 35,000 feet on an airplane, which I am a lot, or whether you're sitting in a room like this, mobility will underpin a fast-paced change in the world of work. So hands, head, and heart. We are increasingly seeing the ability to work with your hands was part of the Industrial Revolution. Now, and the example you gave of surgery, now there are other hands that we can control with our head. And so, of course, the things that are uniquely human, we are seeing coming to the forefront. You saw it, too, when you saw I didn't mention it, but there was a growth in frontline customer service. The reason that is because everything else is automated. So for example, it was last Sunday, I was invited to a Jets game. I'm not a Jets fan, so you Packers, don't go crazy on me. I was invited by a customer, so I was going to go. It was Sunday morning. So before church, I went online. I ordered a Jets t-shirt. It was delivered to me before 8 p.m. that night. So this idea that we can get what we need when we need it immediately is all around this future of mobility and technology underpinning. And that's also leading, so then I needed to call Amazon, and come on, you can't get anybody there. And so you'll see this whole idea of human interaction start to grow, which is why what's uniquely human will take the forefront. So we ask companies, because hard skills are also in demand, technology skills. We ask companies, tell us a little bit about the hard and soft skills and the data behind that. 30% of companies, American companies, said it is difficult to train on hard skills. It's difficult. 40% of American companies said it's difficult to train on soft skills. And my favorite story about soft skills is when we said, okay, what are the soft skills that are most in demand and most difficult to find? So what are those? You might or might not be surprised. Communication was at the very top. Communication. This need to interact with so many different worlds, and particularly in IT, I was impressed, because in IT, communication is also at the top. Well, you students won't appreciate this, but for others in the room, I grew up at a time when the IT department, people were like sitting in dark offices with the glow of their laptop, and you're walking by going, what are they doing in there? Like, that is no longer the world today. IT is the hub with agile technology of running companies. And so, yes, it is also true that communication is the most desired and most difficult to find skill in IT. And by the way, if you're not surprised, you should be, that leadership was not at the top. Leadership's further down the list. Communication is number one. Employee is consumer. So I talked about digital intimacy, so I won't go back through that. But my favorite is now, now, now. So this concept of increasingly, we can choose when something shows up at our house, when something's delivered to me, whether it's Glassdoor or whether it's Instacart or Grubhub, that you get to control when and how and where something comes to your house. So it used to be when Amazon came out, a week delivery was awesome. Like, we can get this in a week. Then it became 2 days. Now it's 2 hours. And so this pervasive digitization of the path to purchase is actually unlocking capability of demand at the moment of desire. So I can actually get what I want as fast as I can think about it. And we are naive if we think that's only going to stay in our role as consumers. It's increasingly coming into the world of work. So I get to choose when, where, and how I work. So funny story, and I mean this respectfully, this story I'm about to tell, but I was with a client recently, and they said, Becky, I wonder what you would have done in this circumstance. And that's usually not a good place to start a question. And I said, okay, where's this going? And the gentleman said, we had a candidate interview, and they told me that they had to avoid the hours of 11 to 3. They didn't want to work from 11 to 3 because their biorhythms were not optimal. True story. Now, I hear you're giggling, but trust me, I was with a client, so I was straight-faced. And I said, okay, well, what did you do? And they said, well, we hired the young man, and he's actually doing incredible work. And so this idea that we are in control of when, where, and how we work, and that you can say, hey, I can't work between these hours because I'm not at my best self during those hours, that increasingly is going to be within the realm of possibility. Now, there are circumstances where that's difficult in a manufacturing environment, et cetera, but where skills sit is where demand and leverage will lie in the future. And so it's very, very important for all of us to continue to build our skills. That's now, now, now. Low barriers to switching. We are sitting on a 10-year high in the quit rate. And so for those of you who are not labor market students, the quit rate just means the percent of our population that's quitting in a certain month and going to another job. It's a 10-year high. And they're quitting, we as Americans are quitting because we're confident there's another job that's out there. LinkedIn and their ability to have social recruiting, I'll call it, so you can be a passive candidate on LinkedIn and somebody can find you and connect, that's actually supporting this idea of low barriers to switching. Next is work with purpose. More than ever before, we are seeing the behaviors of branding. So I buy a brand to show something about myself, come into the workplace. There's great research by Richard Edelman and his group around the trust barometer in our country. And what it says, and I've seen it in my lifetime, trust has, at first when I started in a leadership position, sat with government. Government was the trusted entity. Then it went to NGOs. Now, trust in our country sits with corporations. And so there is an increasing expectation that corporations will take a role, in some people's opinions, similar to government, in stances around controversial issues. But this all works around this idea of working with purpose. I want to have something that I believe in that I'm spending my time on. And then finally is transparency. Glassdoor is the new Better Business Bureau. Anything that people want to know about you, your leadership team, what's happening, they can find out on Glassdoor. And so just know consumers as employees are demanding more information, more transparency, and will be evaluating you based on what they can find online about you. And by the way, that's a company view. Students, it's a view of you too. What is on my LinkedIn profile tells you something about myself. What is on your LinkedIn profile or on your social media accounts will tell us as employers a lot about you as a potential hire for our company. We have 5 generations of consumers working in the workforce today, the most we've ever had in our history. And why is that? Well, we all know that millennials make up about 1/3 of the workforce today. But for boomers, work is the new retirement. I'm sorry if you're a boomer and you're in the room, but you're still working. So work is the new retirement. And the reason that is because, one, we're living longer and healthier lives. And so people are wanting to choose to engage in work. And for companies in a limited supply and demand environment, we actually know that boomers are a safe pair of hands. They know the company, they know the environment. So what does all this cause, though, when you have a more than 50-year time span between these different generations? The need for adaptability is at a peak in our country. So needing to cross communication lines. I have a great example between a boomer and a Gen Zer in a company I used to work with. This Gen Zer came to me, and it was a lady and a gentleman, and she said, he wants to meet all the time, like actually talk. And I keep texting him. And I said, okay, so this is a time for adaptability. We have to understand communication styles. But that's a funny story, but that's a true story. Like, how do we communicate so we can effectively collaborate and move forward? Very, very important for all of us to understand that there is power in difference. The business case for diversity isn't just about diversity you can see. It's also about diversity you can't see. And part of our experiences we've had and how we've grown up is part of the business case for diversity. And so we're all going to have to become more adaptable and have conversations that might be uncomfortable to help us move forward in the workplace. Permanent flexibility, number 6. So in my business, part of the reasons people hire companies like mine is they're looking for flexibility in their workforce. An example, a manufacturing company is launching a new product. They have a surge in production. They'll bring in people from my team to help cover that surge. And the reason people work in my industry is they're looking for more control over their schedule. They're looking to gather skills. But what we're finding today, go back to the I can't work between 11 and 3, is we're seeing this idea of flexibility be part of full-time employment. And the employees can have those conversations that say, I want to drop my kids off and pick them up, and I'm willing to work around that schedule. And so flexibility will be the hallmark of the future corporation. And why is that? Because employers are in a situation where the leverage for negotiation sits with the employee and their ability to say, this is how I want to work. So it's no surprise. There's been almost an 80% increase in jobs that include, mention flexibility in the last 2.5 years. This is a 2.5-year number, an 80% increase. Why is that? Because in a world of limited supply and increasing demand, we all have to be creative to attract talent. There's been a 60% increase in people in America working in a flexible fashion. So choosing to say, like a next generation type of work, that I want to be in control of my schedule. So this idea of flexibility built into corporations will be critical as we move forward. And then finally, the liquid workforce. So liquid workforce, I actually give Accenture credit for that term. Julie Sweet from Accenture coined that term a couple of years ago. But what it means is workers and work will flow through an organization. And that's the traditional organization is very siloed. So I grew up in siloed functions, and with training that's more ad hoc. So hey, we have this new technology, Becky needs to learn how to do it, let's train her. That's an old world. The new world is about an agile organization and the ability to train and retrain organizations, but also flow people to where work sits. So think about that, flow people to where work sits. So that means it's not about the job, it's about your capability. Skills are the new currency in the new economy, and your ability to bring your skills and your capability to the table will determine your movability around an organization. Now, you didn't hear me say your promotability, probably related, but movability. Having a digital passport of skills will be crucial, particularly for you students as you move forward. And so the idea of training is ad hoc and innovation sits in a specific place, those are old ideas. The new idea is what project-oriented work groups. So for those of you that are in the IT space, think Agile for work. Agile won't just be about technology anymore, it'll be how we do work. Continuous training at the core of the organization. The World Economic Forum has said that we will all need 101 days of additional learning over the next 3 years. So if you do the math on that, that's about a month of additional training every year. A month of additional, and by the way, you won't get to do it in a month, You'll do 3 days here, you'll go do a new job. You'll do 3 days here, you'll go do a new job. And so to me, if you're a high learnability person, this future is incredibly bright because it means that it's more important about what you can do versus what you have done. It's more important for what you can do versus what you have done. And so the idea that I went to the University of Texas at Austin, I have an undergrad in marketing, my master's is in finance, nobody cares. They don't. I mean, hook 'em horns. I care. But you know what I mean. People don't care. What they care is she's a continuous learner. She's a constant problem solver. She's comfortable in ambiguity. That she's a great communicator. That's what people care about now. And that you didn't hear me say anything about my functional capabilities. Nothing. Because it's how I apply my functional capabilities in the future through my soft and hard skills is what will be a differentiator for me, and I promise you a differentiator for all of you. So with that, I want to talk just a minute about what this means to you as we've gone through. So the future of work is all of us, as I said, because we don't have a new workforce coming. So what that means for us is for digitization. Don't fear it. In fact, harness it. Think about this idea of haptics as an example. How can haptics help all of you in the classroom? How can haptics help in your business? Learn, unlearn, and relearn. Get comfortable with learnability. Get comfortable with change. Because it is going to be the economy of the future is one that's constant change and not change in a negative way. Think about the opportunities that it creates for all of us, that we have this opportunity. If you don't like what you're doing today, no worries. Chances are in 3 to 6 months, you're going to be doing something different. So embrace that constant change and learnability. Mobility, understand what works for you, whether you're an employee or an employer. We have to relax our view of work and think about the idea that mobility is democratizing the workplace, meaning where you are is where you work. So increasingly as employers and employees, we have to embrace that, which also means, by the way, the idea that like on this weekend, I spent a lot of time writing content for something. I chose to do that. Nobody told me I had to work on Saturday. But where I am is where I work. And so this idea of what's that going to do for the stress of home and work and the traditional separation, we will all have to become owners of our well-being and drawing those own lines because the office won't draw that line for you anymore. Your hands and your phone will draw that line for you. Employee as consumer, again, one of my favorites. This is about focusing on skills, so skills are the new currency. Be uniquely human, hands, head, and heart. What you can do with your hands, a lot of that can be automated. What you can do with your own soft skills and your leadership style, it's uniquely human. And we have to bring that idea of increasingly technology, as humans become more digital, technology will become more human and how we leverage that. Permanent flexibility, make flexibility your stability. And that sounds a little quippy, but it means be comfortable with the fact that I'm going to live in this flexible world. And if you're a leader, that you're going to manage people who demand flexibility and how we all live in this new world around flexibility, yet still driving economic growth. And then finally, liquid workforce, build in time to learn, because we're all going to be adaptable and have to make shifts over the horizon. So with that and some amazing technology challenges that we overcame together along the way, those are the 7 trends I wanted to leave you with in the world of work. I am happy. I think Olivia's going to come up and ask me some questions. She's smiling, so that means she has some good hard questions. But I'm happy to take any questions from you, and sincerely, thank you so much for having me this morning. It's been my pleasure.
So as was mentioned before, I'm Olivia. I'm a junior in the College of Business. And I have a couple questions for Becky, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So my first question is, you talked about important skills that are in demand and some strategies employers can use to acquire those skills. We know that sometimes there are people who may have those skills but may have their talents largely overlooked. This can happen for some women and certainly people from other historically underrepresented groups. Do you think employers need to do a better job of acquiring and developing the talents of these groups? And what kind of strategies do you recommend employers use to ensure we don't miss out on diverse groups as a source of talent?
That's a long question, Olivia. Okay, so how do we make, I'm going to take it as how do we make sure we don't leave out underrepresented groups? So first, I wasn't intending to share this, but I will today. So there's a great new trend happening in the consumer world called evolution. Evolution. And what it means is, and you said it yourself, your graduate school, I think you said 60%, 62%? 62% female. So we are seeing women honestly starting to have a much bigger role in the world of work. And with that, it's changing the characteristics of the workplace. And so we are created differently. If you study the neuroscience and the differences between men and women, there are real differences. But we're seeing some different characteristics show up in the workforce that I think will benefit us in the future. In terms of underrepresented groups, one of the things we do is we do what we call the fourth candidate. And so our contract, so you asked what employers can do, our contract with companies is we'll bring you 3 candidates that match your requirements. So now we're bringing the 4th candidate. And the 4th candidate doesn't necessarily match the exact requirements, but actually can do the job. And so we're trying to teach clients that there's a difference in what's required to do a job and what's desired to do a job. And I think that's true whether it's an underrepresented group or it's actually increasingly true from people that don't have the exact skill set, but still we need to open the aperture and bring more people into the workforce. And so, and you heard me also talk about diversity you can see and can't see. The business case for diversity around corporate boards or companies, it was proven 20 years ago. So that's not the challenge today. In fact, I would say because we have so much demand in our economy, there's a tremendous opportunity to change the face of the workforce today that we didn't have before. So purposefully bringing in underrepresented groups to change the diversity in our country for the first time ever is more of a demand-driven challenge versus a metric that we as companies want to meet.
This one's shorter.
It's okay.
What advice do you have for the people here this morning about how to ensure that their talents are both recognized and developed?
Yeah, so one, we all have to be our own resume. So you have to put yourself out there with the key metrics. So even when the president introduced me this morning, you learned a lot about me. You learned that I'm a mother. That was the first thing on my LinkedIn because it's the most important role I play in my life, more important than anything else I'll do. No offense to the time I'm spending with you today. But it is very important to me. You also heard that I like to run. And I did my first marathon, and the backstory behind that is I had several knee surgeries due to a car accident and was told I would never run again. And I finished my marathon, and I thought fond thoughts of my surgeon as I crossed the finish line. But this idea of brand yourself, you are the owner of brand you. So I do a whole separate piece of work around personal branding. But you own your brand, and if you don't tell people who you are, then we as humans, we close dots. That's why we love puzzles. So we can make connections behind the scenes. But you don't want someone connecting dots on your personal brand. You want to own that yourself. And so figure out your personal brand and share it across social media. Share it with your manager. One of the things I encourage in my personal branding is have a conversation with your manager around this is who the organization thinks I am, because most of us do some kind of assessment or some 360 feedback. This is who the organization thinks I am. This is who I think I am and want to be, and how do I bridge that gap between the two? So the advice I'd have is one, know your brand, document it often and everywhere, and then share that story as much as you can, because that's the only way. The only way we'll know you is by knowing you. And the only way we know you is by who you tell us that you are. And so tell us who you are.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for being here. A quick question going back to the first question where you were talking about required versus desired skills. And I apologize, I don't know the exact statistic, but they said when you look at a job description and you're about to apply, men tend to look at it and say, I got some or many, I'm going to apply. Women say, I don't have all of them, so I'm not going to.
Yep.
Help us understand more about jumping over that gap and then selling yourself when you don't have all those skills needed.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So just to restate the data, the science, the data indicates that men will look at a job description, so I call it below the line. So you know how postings work, is they have a usually general description of the job, and then they have the required 4-year college degree, 7 years of engineering, all that I call below the line. Now, gentlemen in our analysis below the line will say, there are 10 things listed, I have 4, I'm good, I'm applying for that job. It's just science, gentlemen, it's not me. But we ladies will say, oh my gosh, I have 9, I only have 9 of the 10. I can't apply for that job. It's a real problem. It's a significant problem. And so the first thing I would say is be aware of that. Put yourself forward. Just know the real story behind the scenes is most clients haven't looked below the line in years. It's part of why we're bringing the fourth candidate forward, because they're saying below the line all these things are required, but they haven't refreshed that. In some cases, it's wrong. We had one recently around a particular coding skill that said like 9 years required in Python. Well, Python hadn't even existed for 9 years. And so you're like, okay. So the secret is below the line has not been refreshed, revisited, and is often not even looked at by the employer. So please put yourself forward. And that's true for men and women, because if there's a job that you want to do in this world of learnability, put yourself forward. And instead of, and you know, of course, everyone, you will have read that as a candidate, position your capabilities versus your experiences. Position your capabilities versus your experiences. So I haven't done that exact job, but what I have done is this, and how that relates to that job is in this way. So think of yourself as capabilities versus experiences.
My name's Martha Kerrigan, and I'm a Manpower alum.
Oh, thank
you. We heard a lot about changes in the working world. We heard a lot about changes in the population. What does traditional higher education have to do to adapt to that in order to survive?
Yeah, so boy, that's a controversial topic as I sit here at Marquette University. Okay, so I'll tell my version of the truth, which is what I know. Education's ability to keep pace with the demands of the future of work is going to be very difficult. In fact, I'm not sure that you can do it in a traditional way of we're going to teach you how to do X. So you have a finance degree, therefore you know everything about the field of finance. I don't believe education can play that role anymore. What I think education can say is here are the underlying principles, the foundational elements of finance, and here are multiple pieces of ways that you can express that in an organization. Because again, someone who grew up in finance is not necessarily going to be a finance professional. In fact, probably not, because you saw in liquid workforce, we will see the collapsing, probably in the next 5 years, a collapsing of functions. So the idea that I have a finance degree or you're an accounting HR major, which I love, by the way, I told Olivia at the table, what a great combination. Like when she first told me, I was like, ooh, that's weird, accounting and HR. But what a great combination to give her holistic skills so that regardless of where she lands in the world of work, she's going to have to deal with people. You heard me talk about that in HR and human capital. And she wants, she likes the science of numbers, which is different than an accounting major. You like the science of numbers, and that'll enable you to do a host of things. And so that's what I would say. So instead of teaching, you'll have to teach some fundamentals of functions or disciplines, but instead of stopping there, talk about what that unlocks across an organization, because organizations will become much more project-oriented versus I'm going to go to the finance function and check on something today. Those days are increasingly going to be gone.
I'm Chris Rapella from here at Marquette, but I'm just curious, your conversation about it is a buyer's market right now, so lending flexibility to employees and when they want to work and where they work, which I totally agree. The 8 to 5 is a farmer's agricultural model. Yep. But at the same time, as a mother of 3 who spent years telling her kids the world does not revolve around you, yep. right? And that me sort of thing. Yes. So I'm just curious, as we as educators prepare that workforce, how do we balance that, right? Where you're not entitled to anything versus the realities of it's a job market shortage and they can do what they want.
Yeah, so you're now asking parenting. So we've gone from university view to parenting. I would agree. So you think about, and I didn't do this today, but there's a lot of science now and data around the difference in millennials and Gen Zs. And so millennials were raised by baby boomers, do have a stereotypical reputation of being very much about themselves, in part, honestly, because the way the boomer generation raised them. Gen Z was raised by Gen Xers. And so Gen Z is going to be a whole different animal. They're a lot about security. So millennials are about security too, but security comes from within themselves, which I love about millennials. So it means that, hey, I can actually take my toys and go play elsewhere if I need to. So I love that security for them is about them versus the company. Gen Z is going to be different because they're raised by Gen Xers. Gen Z is more about company security. And so it will be interesting that had this intersection of it is about me, but it's not in a millennial way. It's much more in a I need to continue learning so I'm relevant way, so more in a self-preserving but not selfish way. So I think we'll see a different workforce as we come into Gen Z versus what we're seeing from the millennials. And I don't think millennials are a total stereotype, but I love this empowerment that millennials have that says, it is about me, and I'm valuable, and I can do something else. I love that. An interesting stat for you on millennials. We asked millennials what percentage of them thought they should have a new job or a raise within 12 months, and it was over 90%. And so, so power to you millennials, because, but in a world, we laugh about that, which is funny, in a traditional world of work, but in a new world of work, we are seeing, and we are doing it, offering micro raises or micro promotions, where there's little pieces of responsibility that you take on, and it's quite rewarding for the millennial population. Again, you'll find Gen Z to be a little bit different.
Hi. In light of your commentary earlier about the technological advances in AI and HR, how do you combat then what you were saying? It's going to be more about communication. It's more about all these soft skills. It's more about transferable skill sets. So how do you take the AI and the automation out of HR that's going to really be working against that? Because it seems like the way that HR has been viewed by traditional companies is what are the specific degrees, what are the specific skill sets, what are the specific experiences that you were speaking to. So how would you transition into a little bit more emotional, learner, those kinds of things other than keywords?
Yeah, so great question, by the way. Two things I think technology is going to benefit us in the HR space. The first is, in universities, you coined this phrase of need blind. So this came out of the university world of, we're need blind in terms of bringing people in despite their financial situation. We will see we're already seeing it in AI, gender blind, taking out anything, any keywords. I'm a Southerner, so if I said y'all, which I don't in my resume, but if I did say y'all, it would neutralize that word. So think about accent neutralization. We are seeing language neutralization, even in written word, coming into the HR space. So I'm excited about some of the technology coming into HR. On the other side, around soft skills, it's all around assessments. So you heard me say data is the new gold, and I'm talking about human data. The ability to monetize and say, my skills are worth this in the future economy, we're not there yet, but there are tremendous, and I'm not talking about startups, I'm talking about scaled organizations now coming into the HR space around assessments. And there's one that I showed briefly on our slide that's science-based, but it's not a 60-minute, 2-hour assessment. It's like a 2-minute assessment and still scientifically based on what type of learner you are. We call it the learnability quotient. And so I'm Steve Jobs, by the way, so we make it cute because we match it to like a current figure that you know. But it tells you what kind of learner you are. And so I think in two ways, one from a blind neutralization of any characteristics that would differentiate you based on diversity that you can't see, as well as around the assessment of soft skills. So we have the ability today to assess soft skills very robustly, including things like learnability, adaptability. All of that is testable in a scientifically proven way today. So we need to see more of those tools come into the HR space as standard practice.
You mentioned that Manpower won an award for being a great workplace for women. What are things companies should be doing to recruit, retain, and empower women staff?
Yeah, great question. So the question is, what should companies be doing to recruit, retain women specifically? One, flexibility is, again, I believe we're created differently, and flexibility is something. Men want it too. In our research, men increasingly are wanting flexibility, so it's not just a female thing, but women have wanted it for a while. And so providing flexibility, job sharing is an idea that's at least 10 years old. We're actually seeing that come back. But the biggest gift to all of us, men and women alike, is this concept of remote working, that I can actually be productive, so where I am is where I work. And so it really unlocks tremendous amount of flexibility. So being opening the aperture around, presenteeism, that I don't have to be seen to be productive. I can actually be productive wherever I am. And again, you asked me about women, but I think that's a universal thing that we're seeing both, particularly younger men and young women want to have, is this ability that I'm working no matter where I am. And we women are notorious for it. We'll go home, make dinner, and then we go back to work. And all you ladies are nodding your head that are working, you students, it's what's coming. So get ready. But I love that because I feel empowered. I still get to make my choices and my trade-offs. But I believe this whole movement around remote working and mobility is really going to unlock attracting women. But it's the culture that has to support that. So company cultures, university cultures have to say, no, I'm trusting, because it's a trust issue, right? Because now you're connected, so it's not a technology issue. I'm trusting that you're actually getting your work done no matter where you are. So that would be one. The other one I would say is just celebrating diversity. You know, you heard me talk about evolution. I'm telling you, it's super cool. Next time we talk, I'll talk about evolution. But this idea that women are changing the tenor of organizations. Definitely becoming there's more active listening, and they're strengths, as we know, on both sides of the gender. But one of the strengths that women bring is really a gift around active listening and empathy, stereotypical and part of how we're created. The other cool thing about women is if you look at the neuroscience between women and men, men, their synapses fire front to back so if y'all there's like a neuroscience professor in here, come on, this is the elementary version. But the synapses fire front to back in their respective lobe. So whether it's the intellectual side of your brain, the art side, the math side, you front to back. Women, neurologically, we fire all over the place. So there are no patterns in our synapses, which is why we can connect the dots so quickly. But that's a gift for business, right? Because I can see trends, I can see underlying changes, in some cases faster. So recognizing the differences, the uniquenesses that we all bring, whether it's based on gender, or again, I'm a big believer in diversity you can't see, bringing your whole self to work, conscious inclusion, versus unconscious bias. There's a lot of work in the space today in companies around unconscious bias. That's just pointing out where you have bias. I think that's valuable. Much more valuable is the idea of conscious inclusion. So how am I bringing everyone's ideas to the table and making sure everyone's heard?
Good morning. I don't have a question, more of a statement. You, at one point in your presentation, said that you are a mother of 3, and that's your most important job.
Yep.
And sitting in a room of men and women in business, to unapologetically be a mom first and a highly successful woman in business second is just a really fantastic message that we as women need to continue to feel comfortable to say out loud in the workforce and celebrate women who choose to have a family first and women who don't choose to have a family first, because the path is so unique.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah. One of my personal beliefs is live out loud. And I do that as a mother, but I think we all have stuff that's important to us. I mean, mine happens to be that I want to be with my children, but people have pets, people have interests. When I was marathon training, that was really hard, so I had this love for running. But we as women, it is a bit of a female thing. We tend to keep those things inside ourselves versus leading with them. And so early in my career, the reason I believe in living out loud, early in my career, I noticed, I didn't have kids, I wasn't even married at the time, but I noticed that the guys would be leaving the office Thursdays about 3, and they were going to coach teams, soccer team, baseball team, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, what a great dad. And the women, they were leaving too, but they weren't saying anything. So they were going to coach soccer and baseball, but not saying anything. And so when I realized that, I thought, I'm never gonna do that, because as a young woman growing up under them, it sent a message to me that you can leave, but you can't talk about it. And so now, as my team knows that's here, I'll say, hey, my kid has this today, I'm going. Or I was in a meeting with our CEO, and one of my daughters called, I stepped out, took the call, came back in. A gentleman on my team later said, I can't believe that you did that. And I said, when my kids call, I answer. And I never say, like sometimes my middle daughter particularly, she'll be like, what shoes should I wear today? You know, I'm like, good Lord, I was in a kind of important meeting. But I never say that to her. I say, oh, hi, honey, mommy's in a meeting. Like, why don't you just send me a picture and I'll get back to you? Because I never want them to feel that they're less important than what I do, because then I'm disingenuous if they're not. You know, I can't always be at all their events. I have to balance work and family. But one of the ways we saw for that in the Frankiewicz house is, you heard me talk about family meetings. So we'll have family meetings once a month. My kids despise them. Because I say, it's family meeting time. We're calling it to order. I have the whole thing down. And I'll say, what are the things that are most important in the next month for you that I'm at? Because they know I can't be at everything, but what are those things that are most important? And in my career, there have been twice, only 2 times, 3 daughters, lots of activities, that I have missed the top 1 or 2 things on their list that month for work. So I can't be at everything, but we make a contract around the things that I can be at. I put it on my calendar, and I protect those things.
Hi, my name is Micaiah Sisson, and my question for you is, what advice would you give for someone who wants to apply for a leadership position and they're a minority, they're a woman, but they feel that they're qualified for it, but they actually don't get that position? What advice would you give?
Yeah, so if I understand your question, so confirm that first. If you apply for it and you're qualified, but you don't get the job, what advice would you give? I heard you correctly. Okay. First, always go back and seek to understand, hey, what why didn't I? I felt like I was qualified. Did I not demonstrate my qualifications? Be a student of yourself. Understand what did I do correctly and where did I fall short. And the beautiful thing about humanity is collegial. We're collegial at our core. And so no one ever, I've never had, when I've asked somebody, hey, would you give me some feedback? Now, usually there's a little bit of uncomfortable with the word feedback, but there shouldn't be because it's a gift. But you have to be prepared to take the feedback because chances are you did a lot of things right in the interview, no matter who you are. You did a lot of things right. But you probably said something or didn't say something that they were looking for. But you'll never know if you don't ask. And I find that, and I don't see this necessarily around gender, I see it in general. We as human beings, when we're disappointed, when we're embarrassed, we shrink instead of step forward. And so step forward into that because you're gonna miss a chance to learn. And if you truly wanna grow, you're gonna have that opportunity again to put yourself forward, and don't miss that chance to learn. So one of the things we always try to do in ManpowerGroup is get feedback. Because think about, we place 300,000 people a year, 300,000 in America alone. But that means there's probably 900,000 interviews that people don't get selected for. So we're constantly having to give this feedback on, hey, why didn't I get selected? But we do that on purpose because we want that person to earn the right to get another chance. So always ask, be a student and an advocate for yourself, and always ask. And we don't. And I really genuinely have never seen a situation where people aren't willing to give the feedback. We love being asked our opinions as human beings, so it's true.
All right, so at this point, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for coming and spending the beginning of your morning with us. Yes. And thank you to Becky for coming and speaking with us.
Thank you. Have a great day.